Nobody test drives this thing on purpose. It's shaped like a shipping container that got into an argument with a refrigerator. The back doors swing open the wrong way, there's no pillar in the middle, and the last time Honda sold a brand new one, a gallon of gas cost about $2. People point and laugh at it in parking lots. And yet I've got one sitting on my lift right now, bought for $5,000, that just clicked past 281,000 miles on its original engine. Meanwhile, this year alone, brand new Toyotas rolled into shops across the country to have their motors pulled out and replaced under warranty. That's not me being dramatic. That's a federal recall you can look up. Let me explain. The vehicle is the Honda Element, built from 2003 to 2011, then quietly killed off because Honda decided America wasn't ready to embrace a car that looks like a lunchbox on stilts. And here's the thing I need you to understand before we go any further. The ugliness is the entire reason you can afford it. Every styling decision that made people sneer at this thing in 2005 is the same decision that makes it a genius buy in 2026. The boxy roof means real headroom. The plastic-clad body panels don't dent and don't rust the way sheet metal does. The rear-hinged doors with no center pillar mean you can load a couch, a dog crate, or a full sheet of plywood through an opening most SUVs would choke on. Honda even gave it a plastic floor you can hose out. This was a vehicle engineered by people who cared more about function than about whether you'd look cool in the school pickup line. Now, I need to be honest with you about the price, because I'm not going to sell you a fantasy. The Element developed a cult following, and that means clean, low-mileage examples have crept up. A tidy one with under 120,000 miles can run $12,000 to $18,000 now because collectors and van life people finally figured out what they had. But that's not the one I'm telling you to buy. The $5,000 Element is the one with 180,000, 200,000, sometimes 230,000 miles on the clock. Cosmetically rough, faded plastic, a scuff on the bumper, the kind of listing most buyers scroll right past. And that is precisely the one a mechanic wants, because on this particular vehicle, high mileage is not a warning sign. It's a resume. Here's why. Under that ugly hood sits one of the greatest four-cylinder engines ever mass-produced, the Honda K24. In the Element, it is the K24A4, making 160 horsepower, bumped to 166 in 2007 and up cars. And I want to walk you through the engineering, because this is where the whole argument lives. The K24 has an aluminum block with cast iron cylinder liners and a forged steel crankshaft, parts you would expect in something far more expensive. It runs a timing chain, not a timing belt, which means there is no $500 belt service hanging over your head every 90,000 miles waiting to snap and destroy the engine. It is naturally aspirated, no turbochargers to blow their seals. And critically, in these years, it uses good old port fuel injection, not the direct injection that gunks up intake valves on so many modern engines. Simple, overbuilt, boring in the best possible way. This is the same engine family that Honda dropped into the Accord, the CR-V, and the Acura TSX. There are documented Acura TSX taxis and daily drivers that have gone past 500,000 miles on the original K24 block. Not rebuilt, original. When people talk about the handful of engines that have carried more cars to 1 million miles than any V8 ever has, the K24 is in that conversation. I have personally torn into these motors at 250,000 miles, expecting carnage, and found honestly nothing worth reporting. The bottom end just does not quit. So now let me tell you why the title of this video isn't clickbait. Why a $5,000 ugly Honda will genuinely outlast a Toyota you could drive off the lot tomorrow. And I say this as someone who has recommended more Toyotas than any other brand for 20+ years. But right now, Toyota's newest premium engine, the 3.4-liter twin-turbo V35A that goes in the current Tundra and the Lexus LX and GX, is in the middle of one of the ugliest recall sagas I've seen from that company. Machining debris, tiny metal shards left behind during manufacturing, can lodge against the #1 main bearing and destroy it. The engine knocks, loses power, and in the worst cases stalls out completely, sometimes while towing at highway speed. Toyota has issued 3 separate recalls for the same problem: May of 2024, November of 2025, and again in May of 2026. Put together, that's more than 270,000 trucks and SUVs. Toyota has already replaced over 70,000 engines. Brand new engines, yanked and swapped on vehicles that cost people $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. Sit with that for a second. A modern, expensive, twin-turbocharged, direct-injected Toyota V6, the pride of the lineup, grenading its own main bearing before it ever leaves the manufacturer's radar. And a discontinued, unloved, port-injected Honda 4-cylinder from the Bush administration, cheerfully rolling past 300,000 miles. That is the entire lesson of modern car buying in one comparison. Complexity is not reliability. Turbochargers, high-pressure direct injection, tighter tolerances, more sensors, more emissions plumbing, every one of those is another thing that can fail. The Element wins, not because Honda built something magic, but because Honda built something simple. And then the industry spent 20 years adding failure points to everything that came after. Let me give you the real numbers, because this is where it stops being a story and starts being math. RepairPal pegs the Honda Element's average annual repair cost at right around $490. That is below the compact SUV average, and in some of their segment rankings, the Element sits at the very top for dependability. Compare that to what a main bearing engine replacement costs out of warranty on a modern turbo V6, you're staring at a 5-figure repair, easily $8,000 to $12,000 if you're paying for it yourself. On the Element, the most expensive thing I've ever quoted a customer was a full front and rear sway bar and suspension refresh at around 190,000 miles for about $700, and that car had earned it. I had a customer last spring, a nurse, mid-30s, single income, 2 kids. She came in ready to finance a certified pre-owned compact SUV, one of the popular ones, for $24,000 at 7% interest over 6 years. I did the quick math out loud for her. By the time she paid it off, she'd have spent north of $30,000. I asked her to give me 1 week before she signed anything. I found her a 2008 Element EX with 176,000 miles for $5,200 from an older couple who had every service record in a folder. It groaned a little on tight turns, which I'll come back to, and the front bumper had a scuff. I inspected it top to bottom, changed a few fluids, handed it back. She paid cash. That was 14 months ago. She's put 22,000 miles on it, and her total spend on repair so far is under $200. No payment, no interest, no $24,000 hole in her life. Her words to me, "I can't believe I almost financed a car when this existed." If this kind of straight talk is useful to you, do me a favor and hit subscribe, because I make these videos specifically to keep people from getting talked into payments they don't need. And stick with me, because now I'm going to give you the exact inspection checklist for buying one of these, including the 2 things that scare off amateur buyers but are actually cheap easy fixes that you can use to knock the price down. First thing, check the rear differential, but only if it's an all-wheel drive model, which uses Honda's real-time four-wheel drive system. Take it on a tight turn, a slow, full-lock circle in a parking lot, and listen. If you hear a groan or a shudder, do not panic and do not walk away. On these all-wheel drive elements, that groan almost always just means the rear differential fluid is overdue. It needs Honda's specific dual-pump fluid changed roughly every 30,000 miles, and when it gets neglected, it groans on turns. A dealer or shop does the fluid change and burnish for somewhere between $80 and $200. That noise scares buyers away, which means it's your negotiating tool. Use it to take $500 off the price, then fix it for a fraction of that. Second, check the door locks and the airbag light. The Element is famous for two nagging little gremlins, sticky door lock tumblers that stop working after years of use, and an SRS airbag warning light that comes on from a faulty seatbelt wire harness. Neither is a mechanical death sentence, but you want to know they're there. And separately, this is important because these are old cars from the Takata airbag era. Every single Element had airbag recalls. Run the VIN on the government recall site or through a Honda dealer and confirm the airbag inflator recall has actually been completed. That repair is free, but you want it done before you drive off, not after. Third, and this is the big one, get underneath it and look for rust. This is the single most important inspection point on a cheap Element. The engine will outlive you, but the body can rot if the car lived somewhere they salt the roads. Look hard at the rear wheel arches, the exhaust, and especially the rear subframe underneath. Surface rust on the exhaust is normal and cheap. Structural rust on the subframe is a walkaway. Take a flashlight, take a screwdriver, and gently poke. If it's flaky and crunchy, thank them for their time and leave. If it's solid, you've found a good one. A rust-free Element from a dry climate with 200,000 miles is worth more than a rusty one with 90,000, and it's not close. Fourth, listen for a brief rattle on cold startup. The K24 can develop a short rattle from the VTC actuator or the VTEC solenoid when it's cold, usually settling within a second or two as oil pressure builds. On its own, and if the car has clean oil change history, it's typically minor. A solenoid or actuator is a manageable fix, not a catastrophe. What you're really checking is the maintenance story. This engine's few weak points are almost entirely prevented by regular oil changes. So the fifth and final thing, and honestly the most important, is records. Give strong preference to an Element with a real verifiable service history and oil changes every 5,000 miles or so. A high-mileage Element with a folder full of receipts is a better buy than a low-mileage one with no paperwork. On this vehicle, documentation is worth more than the odometer. So who should actually buy this thing? If you need a rugged, cheap, do-anything hauler and you genuinely do not care what the neighbors think, this is close to a perfect vehicle. Dog owners, this car was practically built for you. Plastic floor, easy clean seats, wide opening. Tradespeople, gear haulers, campers, van life on a budget people, this is your machine. Anyone who's tired of car payments and wants to pay cash for something that'll run a decade, this is the escape hatch. And anybody who's watched a friend get burned by a fancy modern engine and just wants something that starts every single morning, welcome home. Now, who should skip it? Let me be fair, because I don't sell fantasies. If you need to seat 5, look elsewhere. The Element only has 4 seats. If you want a quiet, plush highway cruiser, this isn't it. It's noisy on the freeway and the ride is a little choppy over rough roads. Fuel economy is fine, but not amazing, around 21 miles per gallon with all-wheel drive. If you're buying it as a status symbol, obviously wrong video. And if you live somewhere that drowns roads in salt every winter and you can't find a clean-bodied example, I'd rather you buy a rust-free car of a different kind than a rotten element, no matter how good the engine is. The engine isn't the thing that kills these. Neglect and rust are. Here's my final take. The Honda Element is the closest thing to a cheat code that exists in the used car market right now. You are buying a legendary, simple, timing chain, naturally aspirated engine that routinely sees 300,000 miles, wrapped in a body so unfashionable that it scared away every buyer who cares about looks, which is exactly why you can still get one for $5,000. And you're buying it in a world where a brand new $60,000 Toyota might be sitting in a dealer service bay waiting on a replacement engine for a defect the factory hasn't fully sorted across 3 recalls. Ugly and running beats pretty and stranded every single day of the week. If I had $5,000 in my pocket right now and I needed something to drive for the next 10 years with the lowest possible cost per mile, I wouldn't finance anything. I'd find a rust-free, well-documented Element, change every fluid in it that first weekend, and never think about it again. So the next time you're on a lot and a salesman is steering you toward a shiny lease return with a payment book attached, remember there's an ugly little box out there with a bulletproof heart that'll outlast half the new cars in that showroom. If this helped you, hit that subscribe button. I've got a whole video on the modern engines I'd personally avoid buying used, and it pairs perfectly with this one. It's right up here. That's over 2 decades of turning wrenches talking. Take care of a good engine, and it'll take care of you. I'll see you in the next one.